Welcome to Chapter 12, and in this chapter we're going to learn the fourth declension and comparatives. And we'll do the comparatives first.
In this first of the two Chapter 12 videos.
So we'll have an overview, how to form them, how to use them in an actual comparison, and then also comparative adverbs. After some practice,
Then in the next video,
we'll start the fourth declension. We'll have an overview, and most of the fourth declension will just be noun-adjective agreement with other declensions. So, more of that. First, comparatives. Anything blank-er is what a comparative is. So, any adjective, like big, can have 3 degrees. Big, bigger, biggest. And we're going to be dealing with the middle one today, bigger.
and notice at the bottom there that the terms for those 3 degrees are positive, comparative, and superlative.
So how do you say blanker in Latin? Well, here's the main rule. No matter what declension an adjective was in its base level positive degree, was it a first and second declension adjective, or was it a third declension adjective, or something like that? No matter what it was, we are going to force it to be a two-termination third declension adjective.
Of the format
IOR and IUS. Or ius. Now remember, back in third declension, if it was a two-termination adjective, it was always if and then for the neuters. Like brewis, brewe. But here it's still going to be two terminations, but it's a different
two.
IOR and IUS. So it's two separate terminations this time. But in any case, it still is a two-termination adjective. And any comparative, forever and ever amen, will be a two-termination green third declension adjective over here. So let's do some examples. For instance, if I have an adjective like pretty, how am I going to make the comparative?
Prettier.
Well, I'm going to stick on an IOR, IUS, and that will force it to be third declension. Same with an adjective. Old. How am I going to make that comparative? How am I going to say older? Well, I'm going to force it to be third declension. Antiquior, antiquius. And we could go through any lower form as well. So, of the human. What about of the humaner thing? Well, that would be humanioris. And now you're starting to see that third declension ending is. Or foidum, dirty, ugly. How are we going to make it? Remember, oh, this is the special one, neuter, foidius. Oh, that wasn't IOR, was it? Okay. I grow with a sick something. I griore with a sick or something. Oh, and I have a little message here. Notice, I stems do not apply. So, what was an I stem? Oh, yeah, that's right. An I stem was like when I would have an I here instead of an E. So we had 3 kinds of I stems, yum ones, where it just had an I stem in the genitive plural. Then doubly troublies, where it also had an I stem here in the ablative. And you would have expected that this one would have been a doubly troubly. Because remember, doubly troublies were all third declension adjectives. All of them. And here we've got a third declension adjective, right? So you would think that this would be an I stem, right? It should be I-gri-or-re with a long I, shouldn't it? But I stems are only in the positive degree. They're not in the comparative degree. So there isn't any I stem here. It's just like a normal noun, not a doubly troubly. So maybe that's easier for you. I don't know. There was also a 4th kind of I stem called a quadruple neutrial, and we're not going to see any of those either. So, I stems, gone. All right, so you only had to worry about I stems if it's the positive degree, big, not if it's the comparative degree, bigger, or not if it's going to be the superlative degree, biggest. No, just the lowest level. Okay, alta, the high things or deep things. Altiora, the deeper things. Dun, 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 dun. Plenarum. Of the full things. How would we say of the fuller things? Think about it. What? Planiorum. And notice I stems don't apply, because you might have thought it would be planiorium, right? Doubly, troubly, third declension adjective? No, it's not like that. It's just not ium. Okay, paucos, few ones. Pauciores, fewer ones. Pauciores, okay. Okay, so there's also several adjectives that you're not going to have to worry about making the comparative here until stage 19 because they have irregular comparative and also superlative forms. Good, you're not going to have to worry how to say better because that would be something weird, melior, melius, like ameliorate. So that's going to be put off until Capitulum 19. Much, you're not going to have to worry about more. More is going to be something weird. Little or small, you're not going to have to worry about smaller. I won't ask you to say smaller because it's going to be irregular, minor, minus. So don't worry about those three. Okay, so we already did the hard part, which is making comparatives out of first and second declension adjectives. Now let's do the easier part, which is just making comparatives out of third declension adjectives. Well, what are you going to do? Obviously, you're just going to insert IOR. It's so simple. The endings will stay the same. Is, ee, or IUS, of course, because it's two terminations. So Felix is going to become Feliki or Felicius. It was one termination over here on the left, but it's two terminations over there on the right. But it's still the same stem, Felic. You just put on IOR or IUS. Great. Tristis, Triste, same thing. Just insert IOR or IUS. Keller, Kelleris, Kellera. Kellerior, Kellerius. Okay? So it's real simple, really. Now, do watch out for the ablative and genitive plural because obviously, as I said, there are no I stems. I stems do not apply. So there's an I stem on the left. See how I highlighted it in orange? There's an I stem on the left, but you don't see any highlights over here. E became E. Leves, leviores, the lighter ones. Heavy things or serious things, graviora, seriouser ones. Now notice it wasn't gravioria with an IA. No, it's just A. And tenuium, there's another I stem, but it's not an I stem in the comparative. Tenuiorum, of the weaker, thinner ones. Okay. Tristibus, two or four the sad ones. Tristioribus, two or four the sadder ones. All right, so hopefully you got the hang of it, but in case you didn't, here is the actual rule, the actual set of steps that you're supposed to go through in your mind. First, before you do anything else, decide, is it one of those two adjectives, neuter, singular, nominative, or accusative? Is it one of those? Well, because if it is, we're going to put IUS on it, right? What should you watch out for? Anything ending in or like two termination, tristis, triste, or even one termination endings like ingains or at the bottom here, felix, could be neuter singular, couldn't they? Because they don't have a second termination. Okay, so if you see any of those, watch out, it might be this IUS form. So, to make the IUS form, first, get the stem. Mr. Edmond, how do I get the stem? The rule, technically, is you take the genitive singular form, whatever that is, and remove IS. But I think you should just be able to pick it up. It's whatever is preceding 9 out of the 10 forms is the stem. All right, so let's get the stem. Ready, go. Okay, see how I took off off the first and second declension ones, and I took off off the top one. And now down here, Felix, to get the stem, I actually had to add on a C because X is not used in 9 out of 10 of the forms. So felic. And notice the only way that I know that this is neuter is from context, because I looked later in the sentence and saw there was a neuter noun sitting later in the sentence that this felix is modifying. So, felix could be masculine if it was felix vir, or feminine if it was felix femina. But if it's felix os, then it's going to be one of these neuter special cases. Okay, so felic. And then I add on IUS. How nice. Longer, prettier, seriouser, happier, a happier face. Felicius os. So that's the special case. Most of the time, 95% of the time, you're not going to have a comparative neuter. Think about it. It has to be a blanker thing. Is that going to be very common? No. So here is the 95% of the time what you're going to run into instead, which is IOR as the sign of the comparative. So step 1, get the stem. All right, ready, go. All right. Then add on IOR. And if it isn't nominative singular, like it's dative, for instance, then add third declension endings. And notice, if it's not nominative singular, then you make it long O. So grawioris, grawiori, grawiorem, grawiore, and so on and so forth. Okay, so notice also there are no I stems there. Those are the 4 places that you might expect an I stem. Nothing. All right, so how do you use a comparative form in an actual comparison? Usually in an actual comparison, don't we say something is blanker than? We have 2 things in an actual comparison, blanker than something else. Okay, well, here's how you do it. No matter what case the comparative adjective is, like dative or ablative, to make the than part, add quam plus the accusative of that word, or add the ablative of that word. So here you see some comparative adjectives of various cases. So dative, nominative or accusative plural at the last one. So no matter what case, number, gender it is, I'm going to add quam plus the accusative to make the than something else. So 2 or 4, the one longer than a road. The thing redder than a rose. Grawiores, the ones that are heavier than shields. And there's your translations. So that's one way that you can make the than part of the comparison. The other way is just to add the ablative form of it. So, via longiori. Than a road.
2 or 4 something longer.
Or rosa rubrius.
Than a rose, something redder.
I don't really myself think of this as thana when I see it, because to me quam is than. That's the word that means than. When I see an ablative snugged up against a comparative like this, what I think of is, in the context of a rose,
there's something redder.
Like the rose is
the background circumstance or context or situation in which something else is redder.
So think about that. Rosa, given a rose, this thing is redder. Obviously, the understanding of it is than the rose. But that's not quite the way you say it. The way you say it is, rosa, by or with comparison to a rose, here is a redder thing. That's the way you think about it. Scooties, by or with comparison to shields, heavier ones. So try to think of it in a Latin way. Don't try to say the English that I've written down here. Try to think of it
as a 2-word unit.
Scooties grawiores. In fact, expect an ablative
beforehand.
2/3 of the time, Romans will use an ablative for the than Rarely will they use quam plus the accusative. So this is more common on the left. So expect a buzzing ablative before a comparative.
Hear how I make my voice dip on the ablative so as to contrast with my voice emphasizing the eor syllable, the greater one. Scuti scraviores, via longiori, rosa rubrius. It's kind of like a speed bump or pothole
before the thought of the comparative comes along. Okay, so we don't just do comparative adjectives like blanker, but we can also do comparative adverbs like blankerly or more blankly. And this is going to be so easy compared to how complex it was in the positive degree. So remember those IUS endings that went here? So that IUS ending is going to be your adverb. There is no difference written on the page, at least. And you should expect this because remember just how was an optional form of the adverb back in the positive degree? Like igrum could mean not just a sick thing, but also sickly. Now you could also say igre or tristiter. So there were three options, but one of the options was which is also the neuter. So you should expect naturally that it would be completely normal that also here in the comparative, the neuter form is going to do double duty for the adverb. So this is going to be completely expectable. So longius could mean a longer thing, or it could mean longerly. Pulchrius, a prettier thing, or prettierly. Gravius, a seriouser thing, or seriouserly. You get the idea. And this is a good time to also go into the ways to communicate comparative in English. Because I've been saying blankerly, but you could also have more blankly, right? Because that is also comparative. Or we sometimes run into translations that use quite blankly or even rather blankly. Now, you would say, hey, but is that a comparative? Yeah. If you say something is quite blankly, it implies that it's a degree higher than the base level. Or rather blankly, it's a degree higher than the base positive level. So get used to these four possible translations of a comparative popping up. You might not see blankerly. You might see more blankly. You might see quite blankly. You might see rather blankly. All these are me tipping you off that I want you to write a comparative. Of course, you could look under the line and it would actually say comparative, but hey, this is just something you should know. But the most common one, of course, is blankerly. So, just to formally state it, in the positive degree, you had three ways to make an adverb, and a in first and second declension, and iter in third declension. So longum or longe, longly, or breviter, briefly. But in the comparative, there is only one way to make a comparative adverb, IUS. Simple. How wonderful. All right, so why don't you do some practice on these? Practice writing comparatives. Now you're going to use these words, so stop the video and make sure you know these words pretty well. And then in this exercise, do a whole line at a time. So a healthy man would be sanos. And then over here in the right column, I want you to just insert the ER form of the adjective. So a healthier man would be a sanior. Okay, so of the sad ones, I would want it over here to be of the sadder ones. So stop the video and try these and see if you can get them right, and then start it when you're ready to see the answers. Go. So here are the answers. Notice on the left that we have 4 I stems in there, and none on the right column, obviously. So hopefully you were able to do these harder I stems as well. But if you weren't, then go back to review the third declension, and I think that was chapter 9. So you had 1, 2, 3 doubly troublies there. This one a genitive plural, these 2 ablative singulars, and then you had a quadruple neutrial form right there. Alrighty. and then use this glossary to do the next 2 slides. Okay, so these are groups of adjectives that often go together. Short, it goes with long or tall. Thin goes with thick or wide, or weak goes with strong. So make sure you know these words because you're going to use several of these on the next slide. And this is a good way to think of words too, to get them in your mind grouped together. Once you've stopped the video and gotten your full dose of this. So, all right, in these questions, I want you to put in a comparative, like huger, in each blank. And you're not going to have to do the than part yet. I've already done the than part here, like for instance, quam castra, than the camp. And this story is going to be about this camp right here. So stables, a jail, bathhouse, granary, factory, the praetorium, the headquarters, and the hospital are the classical layout of a Roman military camp. So you might ask yourself, well, how did I know to do the neuter plural ending? Well, obviously, it's from context because it has to agree with castra. Castra is neuter plural, so ingentiora should be neuter plural. So when you do these, if there's a link, then you automatically know that it has to agree with the thing that it's linked to. But if there's no link here, then you might have to look somewhere else in the sentence to figure out what case, number, and gender to put on the end of the comparative.
Also, this word castra is technically neuter plural, meaning castles for the towers around a camp, but its usage is singular, so think camp, not camps.
So stop the video and give it a try, and start it again when you're ready to see the answers. And here are the answers.
Hopefully you could understand this pretty well.
If you can't, I'll read it to you. Now camps by much are huger than camps in centuries ancienter, because our armies than those barbarians more humane are.
The camp
Baths and a stable
has,
because animals than us dirtier are. A hospital
it has,
for one sicker than others. A workshop
it has,
because no one stupider is than him who fights without weapons. In the middle of the camp is the praetorium, which more shapely and more empty is, in which the leader works. The leader himself, with his family, in the headquarters lives, which is a villa even taller than the wall. In the headquarters' end is a basilica, or courthouse, in which is money and the temple of the soldiers, by name the shrine. 2 roads the camp into 4 parts divide. The Via Praetoriana is than the Via Principali longer. Okay, hope you got that, and this time I want you to do it again, but now adding in the than part of each comparison. So if you see than like that, it's probably quam, but if it's like than us over here, then it's probably the ablative form. So try these. Stop the video and start it when you're ready to see the answers. It's the exact same story, again, about this camp.
So stop the video and I'll put up the answers in a second.
Okay? So you want to get in the habit of thinking of these two as a unit, the ablative and the comparative, as a 2-word unit. Than us, dirtier, dirtier than us. The animals are dirtier than us. Always expect an ablative real close to a comparative. Quam is not that common, but always look for an ablative. And you notice it always comes beforehand, which is not Englishy at all, is it? So always be ready to drop your voice and right before a comparative adjective. Nobis foediora. Okay, so now you've got comparatives.
In the next Chapter 12 video, we're going to cover the rest of this presentation on the 4th declension. Walete!